thingy. There, we got it. We are going to take a look at a passage from Genesis 13, and I think it's a very interesting passage, and I think, when it comes to decision making, a few things to consider, and we're going to first take a look at this passage, and we see how two different responses by two different men to decisions they made, and how each of those decisions impacted each of them. And we're going to take a look at how one's decision was motivated purely by the right motives, and the other's was just based on what he could see from an external human point of view. And so it said, now Lot, who was moving about with Abraham, also had flocks and herds and tents, but the land could not support them while they stayed together. For their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together, and quarreling arose between Abraham's herders and Lot's. The Canaanites and the Perizzites were also living in the land at that time. So Abraham said to Lot, "Let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herders and mine, for we are relatives. It is not the whole land before you. Let's part company. If you go to the left, I will go to the right. If you go to the right, I will go to the left." So Lot looked around and saw that the whole plain of the Jordan towards Zoar was well watered like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out towards the east, and the two men parted company. Abraham lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plains and pitched his tent near Sodom. So, we're going to take a look at the motives behind these two men. Each of them made decisions, and each of them kind of had their own separate motivation for their decision making. First of all, let's take a look at Abraham. Abraham made his choice based on peace. Let's just remember that. Abraham was more willing to keep the peace and to keep peaceful family relations over just having his way. Even though he had the right to, as the older man, demand first choice, he decided to say, well, you know what? My relationship with my nephew here is much more important to me than just being right. And so often we have that same choice. We can demand our way, and we could get our way even. We could be right. We might even have the right to be in the right, but you got to sometimes think about how is it going to affect this relationship with this other person. And we see Abraham was really motivated, I think, by family relation, and he was a very family-oriented individual. He wanted a son very badly. He was a very, very much about family orientation. And I think that was one of the wonderful, outstanding qualities about Abraham, is he would rather have let himself be cheated out of something he may have wanted than to ruin family relationship. People were more important to him than just what he wanted. On the other hand, we also see Lot. Let's see what was driving his decision-making process. We'll take, for example, he looked up and he saw that Lot looked up and saw that the whole plain of the Jordan towards Zoar was well watered like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. So Lot was going by his eyesight, what he could see. Not only that, he was going by self-interest. He was making his decision based on purely ego, pride, and what he wanted. So I think it's very important when we come across a decision, especially when it involves other people, we can start to ask ourselves, is me demanding my preference in this situation, is that really a matter of pride and ego? Is it just me wanting to be right or get my way in this situation? I think, that's an important thing. If our heart's not in the right place, we can easily be led astray by our hearts and make the wrong decision. We see how that cost Lot, because Lot was based on what he could see at the moment. At the moment, it seemed like a good idea. At the moment, it seemed like a lush green place to settle. At the moment, it seemed good. Have you ever heard somebody say, well, it seemed good at the moment? He didn't consult the Lord. He He didn't choose to like be unselfish and just say, Abraham, you're my uncle, you're older than me, I'm going to give you the preference. He didn't choose to do that. He chose to go by what he wanted, what his ego wanted, and what looked good. So I think it's very important when we are making a decision to ask, well, am I just going by eyesight alone, what I think looks good? Am I going by my selfishness, what I want? And if we take a look at the passage in James, for example, when it comes to the decision-making process, I think it's very important to consider this passage also, because it kind of gives us a New Testament principle that is clearly portrayed in that Old Testament story. But James talks about how it says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Do they not come from the desires that battle within you? You desire, but do not have. You kill, you covet, but you cannot get what you want. You quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. Sometimes we ask God for something. We don't ask God for something. We just go ahead and try to decide what we're going to do. We don't ask God's direction, or we don't ask God to give it to us, for one. But sometimes, even when we do ask, we ask with the wrong motives. You do not have because you do not ask God, and when you ask, you do not receive because you ask with the wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. So God's saying sometimes God won't answer our prayers because we decide we're doing it out of the wrong motives. It's based on self-interest. It's not based on God's will. It's not based on, it's just purely selfish, And in the passage prior, it says, who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by their deeds done in humility that come from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder in every evil practice. But let's take a look at wisdom from above. But wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace will reap a harvest of righteousness. We see how Abraham's choice was based off of peace, what was truly in the best interest. He let basically Lot make his first decision, and he trusted God with the outcome of what he would get after that. So we sometimes got to just leave the results in God's hands. And even if people seem to try to cheat us out of something, we can trust God is still going to do good if we are doing things His way. And so we see in this story, Abraham actually later on had to rescue his nephew Lot. When God was about, after he got himself into a situation where certain kings from the land raided the surrounding areas, and Lot was taken captive, and so Abraham ends up going to rescue him. You would think that after that point, after Lot got carried off as a captive and Abraham had to come save him, you would think Lot might have reconsidered his personal choice to be in that area that he was. But, no, he didn't. He didn't. And then eventually God sent destruction on Sodom and Gomorrah. And Lot spared his life, but he lost so much in the process. And so sometimes when we choose to do things our way based on selfishness, pride, or ego, when our heart is not right and we're doing things with the wrong motives, we can sometimes get what we want, but we will not truly get the good outcome we want. No matter if we get what we want, if we get what we want outside of God's will, it will always, always, always end in shame and heartache. Hope you found this message encouraging. God bless.